What happens when the most powerful man in America loses the most precious thing in his life? When a billionaire who built an empire from nothing, who survived the deadliest missions as a Navy SEAL, faces an enemy he can't buy off or fight with conventional weapons. This is the story of Marcus Sullivan, a man who had everything money could buy, but discovered that when evil strikes, wealth means nothing. And what he did next didn't just shock his enemies, it changed the world forever. Welcome to SOC Chronicles, where we share stories that remind us of the incredible power of love, determination, and the lengths a parent will go to protect their child. Today's story will take you on an emotional journey that proves sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought on foreign soil, but right in our own backyard. This is a story about a father's love that knew no boundaries, and how one man's quest for justice became a beacon of hope for thousands of families worldwide. Marcus Sullivan wasn't born into wealth. He grew up in a trailer park in rural Kentucky, where his mother worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. His father had walked out when Marcus was 7, leaving behind nothing but empty beer bottles and broken promises. But even as a child, Marcus possessed something that money couldn't buy: an unbreakable determination and a fierce protective instinct. At 18, Marcus enlisted in the Navy with a single goal: to become a SEAL. The training was brutal. Of the 200 men who started with him, only 23 completed the program. Marcus wasn't the fastest, strongest, or smartest, but he had something the others lacked. When others quit, Marcus endured. When others broke, Marcus adapted. When others gave up, Marcus found a way. For 12 years, Marcus served his country in the shadows. He led missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and places that don't appear on any map. He saved hostages, eliminated high-value targets, and prevented terrorist attacks that would have claimed thousands of innocent lives. His teammates called him Ghost because he could infiltrate any location unseen and complete any mission thought impossible. But every mission took its toll. Marcus watched good men die. He made decisions that saved some lives while ending others. And through it all, he carried a photo in his breast pocket, not of a girlfriend or family, but the family he dreamed of having one day. A family he would protect with the same fierce devotion he showed his country. The turning point came during his final mission in Afghanistan. Marcus's unit was ambushed while protecting a convoy of medical supplies heading to a children's hospital. Surrounded and outgunned, Marcus made a choice that defined his character forever. Instead of calling for extraction, he stayed behind to ensure the medical supplies reached their destination. He single-handedly held off enemy forces for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived. When Marcus returned home, he was awarded the Navy Cross for his heroism. But the medal felt heavy in his hands, not because of its weight, but because of what it represented. He had given everything to his country, but now it was time to give everything to the dream he'd carried in his pocket all those years. With his military discipline and strategic mind, Marcus entered the business world like a force of nature. He started with a single contract, providing security consulting to corporations operating in dangerous regions. His reputation for getting results, no matter the odds, spread quickly. Within 2 years, he had built Sullivan Security Solutions into a multi-million-dollar company. But Marcus wasn't content with millions. He expanded into logistics, technology, and infrastructure development. Every business decision was calculated with the precision of a military operation. Every risk was assessed with the strategic thinking that had kept him alive in combat zones. Within 5 years, his company had gone public, and Marcus Sullivan had become one of the youngest billionaires in America. The heart behind the fortune. Success, however, felt hollow without someone to share it with. That changed when Marcus met Dr. Sarah Chen at a charity gala for wounded veterans. Sarah was a pediatric surgeon who volunteered her time treating children in war-torn countries. She had the same compassionate heart that Marcus had protected during his missions, and the same unwavering commitment to making the world better. Their courtship was unlike anything Marcus had experienced. Sarah saw through his wealth and reputation to the man beneath, the boy from Kentucky who had never stopped fighting for what was right. They married in a small ceremony attended by Marcus's SEAL brothers and Sarah's family, with the understanding that their love would be the foundation for something greater than themselves. 2 years later, their daughter Emma was born. The moment Marcus held her in his arms, everything changed. This tiny, perfect human being represented everything he had fought for, everything he had built, everything he hoped for the future. Emma had her mother's gentle spirit and her father's determined eyes, a combination that melted Marcus's battle-hardened heart completely. For 8 beautiful years, the Sullivan family lived what seemed like a perfect life. Marcus had scaled back his business involvement to spend more time with Emma and Sarah. They lived in a sprawling estate in Virginia, complete with horse stables, a lake, and enough security to protect the small country. But Marcus never forgot the lessons of his military service, that evil exists in the world, and it often strikes when you least expect it. Emma was everything a father could hope for in a daughter. She was brilliant, kind, and fearless, often accompanying Marcus on his business trips and charming everyone she met. She spoke 3 languages, was an accomplished equestrian, and had already expressed interest in following her mother into medicine. But more than her achievements, it was her heart that made Marcus proud. Emma volunteered at local shelters, tutored younger children, and had the same protective instinct for others that had defined her father's life. The family had routines and traditions that bonded them together. Every Sunday, they would have breakfast together on the terrace overlooking the lake. Every month, they would take a weekend trip to explore a new place. Every year, they would spend Emma's birthday doing something adventurous: skydiving, mountain climbing, or deep-sea diving. These weren't just activities. They were the building blocks of a family legacy built on love, trust, and shared experiences. March 15th started like any other Tuesday. Emma had convinced Marcus to let her walk to school with her best friend Katie, something she had been asking to do for months. At 8 years old, Emma was mature for her age and had been taking self-defense classes since she was 5. The school was only 6 blocks away through one of the safest neighborhoods in Virginia. Marcus's security team had done a full reconnaissance of the route and deemed it low risk. Marcus kissed Emma goodbye at 7:30 a.m., watching through the window as she met Katie at the corner. The 2 girls walked hand in hand, chattering excitedly about their science project presentation. It was a scene of pure innocence. 2 children enjoying the simple freedom of walking to school on a beautiful spring morning. At 3:45 p.m., Marcus received the call that would shatter his world forever. Katie had arrived home from school, but Emma hadn't. The school confirmed that Emma had attended all her morning classes and had eaten lunch in the cafeteria, but she never made it to her afternoon science class. She had simply vanished. Within minutes, Marcus had mobilized his entire security team. Within an hour, he had contacted every law enforcement agency in the state. Within 3 hours, he had offered a $10 million reward for information leading to Emma's safe return. But as the sun set on that terrible day, Emma Sullivan remained missing. The investigation begins. The FBI took over the investigation immediately, given Marcus's profile and the potential for this to be a kidnapping for ransom. Special Agent Jennifer Martinez, a veteran of over 200 missing children cases, was assigned to lead the task force. She was thorough, professional, and brutally honest with Marcus about the statistics. After 24 hours, the chances of finding a missing child alive drop dramatically. Marcus's military training kicked in. He approached his daughter's disappearance like a mission, gathering intelligence, analyzing threats, and developing multiple operational scenarios. He hired the best private investigators money could buy. He brought in former CIA operatives, behavioral analysts, and data scientists. He turned his corporate headquarters into a command center dedicated solely to finding Emma. The investigation revealed disturbing facts. Emma had been specifically targeted. Security footage from the school showed a man in a maintenance uniform who had been observing Emma for several days before her disappearance. The same man had been seen near the Sullivan estate, at Emma's equestrian club, and at the family's favorite restaurant. This wasn't a random kidnapping. This was a carefully planned operation. But who would target the Sullivan family? Marcus had made enemies in business, certainly, but no one with the sophistication to pull off such an operation. His military service had put him at odds with terrorist organizations, but they typically used different methods. The kidnapper had left no ransom demand, no political message, no communication at all. On day 5 of Emma's disappearance, Marcus received an encrypted video file sent to his personal email. The message was simple. She's alive, for now. You have something we want. Wait for contact. The video showed Emma in what appeared to be a clean, comfortable room. She was unharmed, but clearly scared. In the 30-second clip, she spoke directly to the camera. "Daddy, I'm okay. These people say they know you. They say you'll understand what they want. I love you, Daddy. Please come find me." Marcus played the video hundreds of times, analyzing every detail. The room had no windows. The walls were painted a specific shade of beige that he'd seen before. Emma was wearing different clothes than when she disappeared, suggesting she'd been moved and was being cared for, at least minimally. Most importantly, she had managed to include a subtle hand signal that Marcus had taught her, touching her ear twice, which meant, "I'm in danger, but thinking clearly." The FBI's technical team analyzed the video, but found no useful metadata. The encryption was military-grade. The background audio had been scrubbed. Whoever had taken Emma was professional, well-funded, and technologically sophisticated. This wasn't some opportunistic criminal. This was an organization with resources and expertise. 3 days after receiving the video, Marcus got the call he'd been dreading and expecting. The voice was electronically disguised, but the message was clear. "Mr. Sullivan, you have something that belongs to us. 15 years ago in Afghanistan, you took something from our organization. We want it back, plus interest. You have 72 hours to deliver what we want, or your daughter dies." The caller was referring to Operation Nightfall, Marcus's final mission as a SEAL. His unit had raided a compound that intelligence suggested was a terrorist weapons cache. But what they found was far more valuable and dangerous. Hidden in the compound was evidence of a human trafficking network that stretched from Afghanistan to Europe to the United States. The evidence included financial records, transport manifests, and most damning of all, a list of American citizens who were customers of this horrific trade. Marcus and his team had turned the evidence over to military intelligence, assuming it would be used to shut down the network and prosecute the criminals involved. But in the chaos of military bureaucracy and political considerations, the evidence had disappeared into classified files and been forgotten. Or so Marcus had thought. The caller continued. "You kept copies, Mr. Sullivan. Don't deny it. We know you did, because that's what good soldiers do. We want every copy, every backup, every piece of evidence you have. In return, you get your daughter back alive." Marcus's blood ran cold. He indeed had kept copies of the evidence, hidden in a secure vault beneath his estate. It was insurance against the day when someone might try to silence him or his family. He never imagined that insurance policy would put Emma's life in danger. The impossible choice. Marcus faced an impossible decision. The evidence he possessed could expose a criminal network that had destroyed thousands of lives. The financial records alone would implicate dozens of wealthy and powerful individuals across multiple countries. The client list read like a who's who of politicians, business leaders, and entertainment figures. If released, this information could bring down governments and save countless future victims. But Emma's life hung in the balance. His daughter, innocent, beautiful, trusting Emma, was paying the price for his decision to keep that evidence 15 years ago. The kidnappers weren't bluffing. The sophistication of their operation, their knowledge of his military history, their ability to snatch Emma without a trace, these were professionals who would follow through on their threats. Sarah begged him to give them what they wanted. "Emma is our world," she sobbed. "These other people, these victims, they're someone else's responsibility. Emma is ours." But Marcus knew that if he destroyed the evidence, the trafficking network would continue operating. Hundreds more children would be kidnapped, sold, and abused. How could he save his daughter by condemning other children to the same fate? The FBI strongly advised against complying with the kidnappers' demands. Agent Martinez explained that giving in would likely result in both the destruction of crucial evidence and Emma's death anyway. She said, "These people can't afford to leave witnesses. Even if you give them what they want, they'll kill Emma to protect themselves." Scene 15. The Plan. Marcus made a decision that drew on everything he'd learned as a SEAL, everything he'd built as a businessman, and everything he felt as a father. He would give the kidnappers what they wanted, but not in the way they expected. Working with his most trusted associates, Marcus developed a three-pronged strategy. First, he would create perfect replicas of all the evidence, complete with authentic-looking documents and digital files. The fakes would be sophisticated enough to pass initial inspection, but would contain hidden markers that would eventually expose them as frauds. This would buy him time. Second, he would secretly upload the real evidence to multiple secure servers around the world, with instructions for automatic release if he failed to check in every 24 hours. He also prepared physical copies to be delivered to journalists and law enforcement agencies worldwide. If something happened to him, the truth would still come out.
The kidnappers had chosen the exchange location carefully, an abandoned warehouse complex in Baltimore, far from Marcus's home base and security resources. The area was isolated, with multiple escape routes and few places for surveillance or tactical teams to hide. It was a professional choice that confirmed Marcus's assessment of his opponent's capabilities. Marcus spent the 48 hours before the exchange preparing like he was going back into combat. He studied satellite images of the area, planned multiple ingress and egress routes, and positioned his team strategically around the warehouse complex. He wore body armor beneath his business suit and carried weapons that couldn't be detected by standard security screenings. Most importantly, he recorded a video message for Emma, just in case he didn't survive the operation. "My darling daughter, if you're watching this, it means Daddy couldn't come home to you. But I want you to know that everything I did out of love for you. You are the best thing I've ever done in my life, and no matter what happens, you are loved beyond measure." Sarah wanted to come with him, but Marcus refused. "I need to know you're safe," he told her. "If something goes wrong, Emma will need her mother." Instead, Sarah would wait at a secure location with FBI protection, ready to care for Emma when the rescue succeeded. The night before the exchange, Marcus couldn't sleep. He walked through Emma's room, touching her stuffed animals, looking at her drawings on the wall, remembering all the moments they'd shared together. In 8 short years, she had become the center of his universe. Everything he'd built, everything he'd achieved, meant nothing compared to her safety and happiness. At exactly noon on March 25th, Marcus arrived at the designated warehouse, carrying a metal briefcase containing what the kidnappers believed was 15 years' worth of evidence that could destroy their organization. He was alone, as instructed, but he knew his team was watching from concealed positions throughout the area. The warehouse was dark and echoing, filled with the skeletal remains of abandoned machinery. Marcus walked to the center of the space, where a single chair had been placed under a shaft of sunlight streaming through a broken skylight. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. He was stepping from darkness into light, hopefully taking Emma with him. "Mr. Sullivan," the voice came from the shadows, electronically disguised but clearly confident. "You're punctual. We appreciate that in a business partner." 3 figures emerged from the darkness, all wearing masks and dark clothing. The leader carried a tablet computer and gestured for Marcus to place the briefcase on the ground. "Open it slowly," he commanded. "Any sudden movements, and your daughter dies immediately." Marcus opened the briefcase, revealing perfectly organized files, hard drives, and documents. The leader examined the contents carefully, using the tablet to verify that the digital files contained the expected information. Marcus held his breath, knowing that his team's forgeries were good, but not perfect. If the kidnappers had the original evidence to compare against, the deception would be discovered quickly. After 10 agonizing minutes, the leader nodded. "This appears to be what we were looking for, Mr. Sullivan. You've made the right choice for your daughter's sake." "Where is Emma?" Marcus demanded. "Patience, Mr. Sullivan. Business first, then family." The leader pulled out a phone and made a quick call. "Bring the package." From the far end of the warehouse, another figure emerged from the shadows, gently guiding a small form forward. It was Emma, alive and apparently unharmed, but clearly terrified and exhausted. She was wearing the same clothes from the video, and her usually perfect hair was disheveled. But her eyes, those determined eyes that matched her father's, were still bright and alert. "Daddy," Emma's voice echoed through the warehouse as she broke free from her captor and ran toward Marcus. He caught her in his arms, lifting her off the ground and holding her tight against his chest. For a moment, nothing else existed. Not the kidnappers, not the danger, not the mission. There was only a father and his daughter, reunited against all odds. "I knew you'd come for me, Daddy," Emma whispered in her ear. "I never stopped believing." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face, the first tears he'd shed since he was a child. "I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Are you hurt? Did they hurt you?" "I'm okay, Daddy. I was scared, but I remembered what you taught me about being brave. I counted the days, and I knew you were looking for me." But the moment of joy was interrupted by the leader's voice. How touching. "Now, Mr. Sullivan, you and your daughter need to leave. Take your evidence and go. Forget this ever happened. Forget what you know. Live your life, and let us live ours." Marcus stood, still holding Emma, and faced the kidnappers. It's over then. You'll leave my family alone. As long as you keep your mouth shut about our business, yes, you have our word." Marcus nodded and turned to walk away, but Emma tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, what about the other children?" "What other children, sweetheart?" "The ones in the room next to mine. There were 3 of them, 2 girls and a boy. They've been there much longer than me. One of them said she'd been there for months. Are we going to help them too?" Marcus's blood ran cold. These weren't just evidence destroyers. They were active traffickers with other victims. He looked into Emma's trusting eyes and saw his own moral compass reflected back at him. How could he walk away, knowing that other children were suffering?
"There are other children here?" Marcus asked the leader, his voice deadly quiet. "That's not your concern, Mr. Sullivan. Take your daughter and leave, now." But Marcus had made his decision. He gently set Emma down behind him, shielding her with his body. "Emma, sweetheart, I need you to walk back toward that door very quietly. Don't run, just walk. Can you do that for Daddy?" Emma, wise beyond her 8 years, understood immediately. "What about the other kids, Daddy?" "Daddy's going to help them, but I need you to be safe first." As Emma began walking toward the exit, Marcus turned to face the kidnappers. "I can't leave those children here. You have what you wanted. Let them go." "That's not how this works, Mr. Sullivan. You got your daughter back. That's all you paid for." "Then let me pay for the others. Name your price." The leader laughed coldly. "Some things aren't for sale, Mr. Sullivan. Those children serve other purposes. Walk away." Marcus activated the emergency signal on his watch, a barely perceptible movement that told his team the situation had changed. "I'm not walking away from children in danger. I couldn't do it as a soldier, I couldn't do it as a man, and I sure as hell won't do it as a father." The warehouse exploded into action as Marcus's team breached the building from multiple entry points. Smoke grenades filled the air, cutting through the shadows with blinding white light. The kidnappers reached for their weapons, but they were facing former Navy SEALs who had trained for exactly this type of operation. Marcus grabbed Emma and dove for cover as gunfire erupted around them. "Stay down, baby girl. Keep your eyes closed and count to 100, just like we practiced." The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes. Marcus's team had the advantage of surprise, superior training, and righteous motivation. When the smoke cleared, 2 of the kidnappers were dead, and the leader was wounded and captured. More importantly, Marcus's team had located the other children Emma had mentioned, 5 kids ranging in age from 6 to 14, all rescued from what would have been a lifetime of nightmare. Emma had been brave throughout the ordeal, following her father's instructions perfectly. When Marcus finally told her it was safe to open her eyes, she looked around at the rescued children and smiled. "We saved them, Daddy." "Yes, sweetheart, we saved them." The FBI arrived within minutes, followed by paramedics and social workers trained in trafficking cases. Agent Martinez took custody of the captured leader and began the process of interrogating him for information about the larger network. The fake evidence Marcus had prepared for 15 years served its purpose. It had bought them time and led them to the kidnapping location. But now the real evidence could be used to dismantle the entire organization. As they waited for the paramedics to check Emma over, Marcus held her close and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, baby girl. You were braver than any soldier I ever served with." "I learned from the best, Daddy. But I was never really scared, you know why?" "Why, sweetheart?" "Because I knew my daddy was a hero, and heroes always save the day." The investigation that followed Emma's rescue became the largest human trafficking case in FBI history. The evidence Marcus had preserved for 15 years, combined with intelligence gathered from the kidnappers' operation, exposed a network that spanned 12 countries and had victimized over 3,000 children. 47 people were arrested, including prominent figures in politics, entertainment, and business. The network's financial assets, worth over $2 billion, were seized and used as a victim recovery fund. Most importantly, 847 children were rescued from active trafficking situations, and countless others were prevented from becoming victims. Marcus's role in the investigation earned him recognition from law enforcement agencies worldwide, but he refused all public acknowledgement. "I didn't do this for recognition," he told Agent Martinez. "I did it because it was the right thing to do, and because my daughter taught me that heroes don't walk away from children in danger." The kidnappers had underestimated Marcus in every possible way. They thought his wealth made him soft, his love for Emma made him vulnerable, and his desire to protect his family made him selfish. They never imagined that those very qualities would give him the strength to take on their entire organization and win. Emma recovered completely from her ordeal, but the experience changed her in profound ways. She started a foundation called Emma's Heroes that provides support for rescued trafficking victims and their families. By age 12, she was speaking at international conferences about child protection, always beginning her speeches with the same words: "My daddy taught me that heroes aren't people who never get scared. They're people who do the right thing even when they are scared."
Marcus's actions created ripple effects that extended far beyond the immediate rescue. Other trafficking survivors came forward with their stories, inspired by the Sullivan family's courage. Law enforcement agencies around the world revised their protocols for investigating these crimes, incorporating lessons learned from the Sullivan case. Most significantly, Marcus used his business empire and connections to establish the Global Child Protection Initiative, a network of corporations, governments, and nonprofit organizations dedicated to preventing human trafficking. The initiative provided resources for prevention programs, supported survivors, and funded law enforcement efforts worldwide. "I spent my military career protecting America," Marcus explained at the initiative's launch. "I spent my business career building wealth, but I'm spending the rest of my life protecting children because Emma taught me that's the most important mission of all." The kidnappers had taken Emma thinking they could force a powerful man to choose between justice and family. They never imagined he would choose both, and in doing so would create a legacy of protection for thousands of children worldwide. Sarah returned to her medical practice, but specialized in treating rescued trafficking victims, providing both physical and psychological care to help them heal. The Sullivan family became a symbol of hope for other families affected by trafficking, showing that even in the darkest circumstances, love and determination could triumph over evil. 5 years after Emma's rescue, Marcus reflected on how the experience had changed him. "I thought I knew what strength was," he said in a rare interview. "I thought it was about fighting enemies and building businesses and accumulating power. But real strength is about standing up for people who can't protect themselves, even when it costs you everything you've worked for." The Sullivan family's ordeal had revealed a truth that many people struggle to understand: that personal happiness and moral responsibility aren't opposing forces, they're interconnected. By choosing to fight for justice even when it put his family at risk, Marcus had actually made his family safer and stronger. Emma, now 13, had grown into a remarkable young woman who combined her father's determination with her mother's compassion. She excelled in school, continued her martial arts training, and spent her summers working with trafficking survivors. But most importantly, she maintained the same joyful spirit and unshakable optimism that had sustained her through her darkest days. "The bad people thought they could break our family," Emma said during a speech at the United Nations, "but they just made us stronger. They thought Daddy would choose between saving me and saving other kids, but my daddy taught me that love isn't about choosing. It's about finding a way to save everyone." The Sullivan case became a turning point in the global fight against human trafficking. The evidence Marcus had preserved and the investigation that followed led to changes in international law, improvements in victim protection protocols, and enhanced cooperation between law enforcement agencies worldwide. More than 15,000 children had been rescued as a direct result of the network's exposure. Hundreds of traffickers were imprisoned, and most importantly, prevention programs funded by the Global Child Protection Initiative were estimated to have prevented over 50,000 children from becoming victims. Marcus often visited the children who had been rescued from the warehouse that day. Many had been adopted into loving families, others had been reunited with relatives they thought they'd never see again. All of them knew the story of the billionaire who had risked everything to save them, and many had gone on to become advocates and protectors themselves. "Mr. Marcus didn't just save our lives," said Sophia, one of the rescued girls who was now in college studying social work. "He showed us that there are still heroes in the world, and that sometimes heroes look like regular dads who just love their kids enough to do the right thing." On Emma's 16th birthday, the Sullivan family gathered for their traditional adventure, this time a humanitarian mission to Cambodia, where they would help dedicate a new safe house for trafficking survivors. Emma had specifically requested this instead of a typical birthday celebration. As they toured the facility that would house and rehabilitate 40 children, Marcus watched Emma interact with the young survivors with a maturity and compassion that took his breath away. She spoke to them in their native language. She had learned Khmer specifically for this trip, played games with the younger children, and shared her own story of survival and hope. "Do you know what the difference is between a victim and a survivor?" Emma asked a group of rescued children through a translator. "A victim is someone who stays broken by what happened to them. A survivor is someone who uses what happened to them to help others. You are all survivors, and you are all heroes." That evening, as the family sat on the veranda of their modest hotel, Emma surprised her parents with an announcement. "I've decided what I want to do with my life. I want to be a prosecutor who specializes in trafficking cases. I want to put bad people in jail and make sure kids are safe." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride. "Are you sure, sweetheart? It's difficult work. It can be dangerous." Emma smiled, that same determined smile he'd seen in the warehouse 8 years ago. "Daddy, you taught me that the most important work is usually the hardest work, and somebody has to speak for the kids who can't speak for themselves."
Sarah wiped away tears of joy. "Your father and I couldn't be prouder of the woman you're becoming." "I learned from the best," Emma replied, taking both her parents' hands. "You taught me that love isn't just about feeling good, it's about doing good, and I want to spend my life doing good." As their trip continued, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought his family to this moment. What started as a billionaire's worst nightmare had transformed into a global movement of hope and protection. The kidnapping that was meant to destroy them had actually revealed their true purpose and strengthened their bond beyond anything he could have imagined. The children they met in Cambodia knew the Sullivan story. Many wore bracelets that said, "Emma's Heroes," a reminder that someone had cared enough to fight for them. When local officials thanked Marcus for his foundation's work, he consistently redirected the credit to Emma and the other survivors who had become advocates. "I may have started this movement, but it was my daughter who taught me what it really means. She showed me that heroism isn't about being the strongest or the richest or the most powerful. It's about being willing to stand up for what is right, even when you're scared, even when it costs you everything, even when you're just one person against the darkness." The Global Child Protection Initiative had grown beyond Marcus's wildest dreams. It now operated in 47 countries, had rescued over 23,000 children, and had prevented an estimated 100,000 more from becoming victims. But more than the numbers, it was the individual stories that mattered. Children like Emma, who had been given their lives back and chosen to use their second chance to help others. On their final day in Cambodia, Emma asked to visit one more location, a small village where 3 of the children rescued from the warehouse 8 years ago had been successfully reunited with their families. The reunion was emotional and powerful, as Emma was able to see the long-term impact of her father's decision to risk everything for children he didn't even know. 10-year-old Ling, who had been 6 when rescued, ran to Emma and hugged her tightly. "You saved my life," she said in broken English she had been learning specifically for this moment. Emma knelt down to Ling's level, tears streaming down her face. "No, sweetie, my daddy and we just helped you save yourself. You were already brave. We just made sure the world could see it." As Marcus watched his daughter surrounded by children whose lives had been forever changed by their family's courage, he understood that this was the real victory. Not the arrests, not the money recovered, not the laws changed, but the simple fact that these children were home, safe, loved, and free to dream about their futures. Emma stood up and addressed the group of families, survivors, and aid workers who had gathered. 8 years ago, bad people tried to teach me and my family that love makes you weak, that caring about others puts you in danger, and that the world is too dark and scary for good people to make a difference. She paused, looking at each face in the crowd, survivors, parents, aid workers, government officials. But they were wrong. Love doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong enough to fight impossible odds. Caring about others doesn't put you in danger. It gives you something worth fighting for. And the world isn't too dark for good people to make a difference. It's just dark enough that every light matters. As the Sullivan family prepared to return home, they received news that would cap off their remarkable journey. The last member of the trafficking network that had kidnapped Emma had been captured in Eastern Europe, bringing the total number of arrests to 127 across 23 countries. The network that had operated for over 20 decades had been completely dismantled. But more importantly, they learned that 47 more children had been rescued in the final raid, including several who had been missing for years. Among them was a young boy who had been taken from his family when Emma was her age. He was now 16 and would be finally going home. "It's never really over, is it?" Emma asked her father as they watched the news coverage. "No, sweetheart. There will always be people who try to hurt others, especially children, but there will also always be people willing to stand up and fight back. People like you." Emma smiled and leaned against her father's shoulder. "People like us, Daddy. We're a team, remember? You taught me that families stick together and protect each other. But our family isn't just the 3 of us anymore. It's everyone who's willing to fight for kids who can't fight for themselves." Marcus kissed the top of his daughter's head, marveling at the wisdom and compassion of this extraordinary human being who had grown from his greatest vulnerability into his greatest source of strength. The flight home to Virginia was quiet and reflective. Emma spent most of the trip writing in a journal she had started keeping, documenting not just her own thoughts and experiences, but the stories of every survivor she met. She was already planning a book that would give voice to children who had been through trafficking experiences. "I want people to understand that we're not just victims. We're fighters. We're survivors. We're proof that evil doesn't get to win, even when it tries really, really hard." Sarah, who had been watching her daughter with amazement throughout the trip, finally spoke what she'd been thinking for days. "Emma, sweetheart, I need you to know something. Your father and I didn't save you that day in the warehouse. You saved us. You saved our marriage, our family, our purpose in life. You turned our worst nightmare into our greatest mission." Marcus nodded in agreement. "Your mother's right, baby girl.
Before you were taken, I thought being a good father meant keeping you safe from the world, but you taught me that being a good father means raising someone brave enough to make the world safer for everyone else." Emma looked at both her parents with those same determined eyes that had sustained her through captivity, that had given her father strength in the warehouse, that now blazed with purpose and compassion. "I love you both so much," she said simply, "and I love that we're the kind of family that doesn't walk away when other people need help, even when it's scary, even when it's dangerous, even when it would be easier to just worry about ourselves." When they arrived home, the Sullivan estate felt different. It was still beautiful, still secure, still luxurious, but it no longer felt like a fortress designed to keep the world out. Instead, it felt like a base of operations for a family committed to engaging with the world and making it better. That first evening back, Emma asked if they could have dinner on the terrace overlooking the lake, the same spot where they'd shared so many Sunday breakfasts, where normal family life had felt perfect and complete. But now Emma wanted to discuss something important. "I've been thinking about something during our trip," she began, carefully choosing her words. "I know that what happened to me was terrible, and I know it was scary for both of you, but I need you to know that I'm grateful that it happened." Marcus and Sarah looked at each other in concern, but Emma quickly continued. "I don't mean I'm grateful that I was kidnapped, or that I was scared, or that other kids were hurt. I mean that I'm grateful that it happened to our family, because we were strong enough to turn something evil into something good. And I'm grateful that it happened to me specifically because it showed me what I want to do with my life." She paused, looking out over the lake where she had played as a carefree child, before continuing with the wisdom of someone far older than her 16 years. "There are millions of kids in the world who go through what I went through, but they don't have a daddy who's a former Navy SEAL with $1 billion and the connections to fight back. They don't have a mommy who's a doctor who understands trauma and healing. They don't have a family that refuses to give up or give in. So I'm grateful that when evil decided to target a child, it picked me, because I could handle it and because our family could turn it into something that helps thousands of other kids who might not be so lucky." Marcus felt tears running down his face for the second time in 8 years, but these were tears of pride, amazement, and overwhelming love for the extraordinary human being his daughter had become. 2 years later, Emma graduated as valedictorian of her high school class. Her speech, delivered to a crowd that included trafficking survivors, law enforcement officials, and government representatives from 12 countries, was titled "The Courage to Care."
"When I was 8 years old," she began, "someone tried to teach me that the world was too dangerous, too dark, too broken for one person to make a difference. They were wrong. Not because the world isn't dangerous, it is. Not because there isn't darkness, there is. But because they underestimated what one person can do when they refuse to accept that evil gets to win." The audience was completely silent as Emma continued. "My father could have paid the ransom and walked away. My family could have been satisfied with just getting me back safely. But they chose to fight for children they had never met, in situations they had never imagined, against an enemy that had every advantage. And because they made that choice, thousands of children are safe tonight who wouldn't have been otherwise. But here's what I want you to remember. My parents aren't superheroes. My father isn't stronger, smarter, or braver than your father. My mother isn't more compassionate, more skilled, or more determined than your mother. They're just regular people who decided that love means action, that family includes everyone who needs protection, and that the right choice is still the right choice, even when it's the hard choice." Emma paused and looked directly at her parents in the audience. "Every single person in this room has the same power my family discovered 8 years ago. The power to say no to evil. The power to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. The power to turn the worst thing that ever happened to you into the best thing you ever do for someone else. As Emma finished her speech and accepted her diploma, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. The scared 8-year-old who had been taken from a sidewalk 8 years ago had grown into a powerful force for justice and protection. The billionaire who had thought wealth could solve any problem had learned that love and courage were the only currencies that really mattered. In the audience sat dozens of young people whose lives had been changed by the Sullivan family's story. Some were survivors who had been rescued as a direct result of Emma's kidnapping. Others were children of law enforcement officers, social workers, and prosecutors who had been inspired to join the fight against trafficking. All of them represented the ripple effect of one family's decision to turn tragedy into triumph. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and celebrations, Emma was surrounded by her extended family of survivors, advocates, and protectors. Marcus watched with amazement as his daughter moved from group to group, encouraging a nervous young survivor, congratulating a graduating future social worker, and planning next steps with a group of students who had started anti-trafficking clubs at their schools. "She's incredible," Agent Martinez, now a close family friend, said as she joined Marcus in watching Emma. "I've worked trafficking cases for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone turn their experience into such a powerful force for change." Marcus nodded. "She gets that from her mother, the ability to heal not just herself, but everyone around her. But she also understands something I had to learn the hard way, that love isn't passive. Love fights. Love protects. Love refuses to let evil go unchallenged." As the sun set on Emma's graduation day, the Sullivan family returned to their terrace for one more quiet dinner together before Emma left for college, where she would study pre-law and international relations. The conversation turned, as it often did, to the lessons they had learned and the legacy they hoped to leave.
"You know what I think the real lesson is?" Emma asked as they shared dessert. "It's that being a hero isn't about being perfect or fearless or having superpowers. It's about caring more about doing what's right than about what it might cost you." Sarah smiled at her daughter. "And it's about understanding that your family isn't just the people who share your DNA. It's everyone you're willing to protect and fight for." Marcus raised his glass of iced tea in a toast. "To Emma, who taught us that the greatest strength isn't in building walls to keep danger out, but in having the courage to tear down walls that keep love from reaching the people who need it most." The story of the Sullivan family reminds us that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to choose light. Even when we feel powerless, we can find strength in protecting others. Even when evil seems to have the advantage, love and courage can still prevail. Sometimes the most important battles aren't fought by soldiers on foreign battlefields, but by ordinary families who refuse to let extraordinary evil go unchallenged. If this story touched your heart, remember that you have the same power the Sullivan family discovered. The power to protect, to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, and to turn your worst experiences into your greatest opportunities to help others. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that heroes aren't born. They're made by the choices they make when it matters most. And don't forget to subscribe to SOC Chronicles for more stories that prove love, courage, and determination can change the world, one family at a time.